Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. It's the last Buzzcast of the 2018 calendar year. We're here with
howdy, folks. Happy Friday.
Oops. Somebody's
And we're all
I gotta say it twice. Sorry.
starting off with flying colors.
That's on me. Well, it's the chat room. I had to get the chat room going.
Oh, okay. Peter, start us off on the pre-show. Russ has got something too. And then
So, you wake up in the morning and you do your Twitter scan and you see what kind of news is breaking. And well, I just came across one from Sesame Street where it apparently has Grover dropping an F-bomb. And I'm going to play it for you because it's quite incredible. I think Grover drops an F-bomb and it's pretty funny. So this is a great way to end 2018. Hang on. Okay, hang on just a sec. We'll get it right.
Move the camera. Yes, that sounds like an excellent idea.
I mean, it's clear as day.
Is it unedited? That's the question.
I couldn't hear. I couldn't quite. Which one? I couldn't quite hear it.
No, I could hear it.
It's bleep. It's bleeping Christmas or something.
Yeah.
It's
It's a bleeping excellent idea. Like it's
what is the people? It is the People's Television Network.
yeah. I mean, I think if Sesame Street's going to add a homeless character, I don't know what Oscar the Grouch was for all these years, but at least you're going to add some realism to how people talk. That's great.
Oscar the Grouch was on furlough, Peter. It's different. We can't get into that right now.
Yeah. Right. I can't wait to see the bleeping Cookie Monster. Okay, Russ, go ahead.
Yeah.
So yesterday when I was scanning Twitter, I saw Steve Phillips, former GM of the Mets, and he was actually kissing up to the Wilpons. Now, granted, he hasn't been in the fold in the Mets for a very long time. He's been actually doing TSN more than anything, I think.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
He's also doing MLB radio at times, Russ.
Right, an MLB radio. And it's almost like he's been sort of banished from the GM world. And look, he has his own checkered history, but he was an okay GM. But here was the thing. He was basically saying the crux of it was we should feel bad for the Wilpons because of the Madoff situation. And I pointed out to him that not only did they negotiate the settlement down to $58 million, but in 2016 they made $167 million, and 80-something of that, 82 of it was clear. Just that 1 year that they made the World Series. So nobody should ever feel bad for the Wilpons. And it's funny because he got an avalanche of negative posts after that. And that wasn't even the only post. Apparently there was a second one, and I couldn't even bring myself to read the second one.
Well, I mean, he probably sees that Omar Minaya had a part in the Mets management last year. Maybe he thinks the Wilpons will bring him back and give him a job.
Well, Matt Kalman addressed that. Matt Kalman, who writes for he writes out in Boston, covers the Bruins. He basically said, Steve, the Mets just hired a new GM, and he's an agent.
Typically an agent with no experience.
An agent, and he's what he said. An agent with no experience doesn't seem like they have room for you right now.
And honestly, given what I've seen out of Al Wagner, I don't have a problem with hiring. And he's actually brought in a lot of talented guys on the staff.
It's too early for me to say that. He has brought in some players.
But he's upgraded the talent. I mean, the team had no analytics department. At least he's brought guys in that know analytics. I mean,
we'll see. I mean, I'm not even going because we don't know. Here's the funny thing. On paper,
it's better. Right.
Okay. We don't know what the medicals are. We don't know what risks they're taking. We don't know. So I'm not signing off on anything.
And I'm sorry if you're coming to bat for a bunch of cheapskate, what's like the Wilpons. And I'm sorry, I know that they pale in comparison to the big buck Yankees in New York City, but the Mets fans have a reason to complain. It's just like Sabres fans under Tom Golisano. He was the cheapest billionaire in the world. They can thank him for taking the team out of receivership or bankruptcy when the Reguses owned it, but then he didn't spend any money. And those were the years when they had chances to win the Stanley Cup, and they penny pinched, and Darcy Regier, didn't have any money to add one extra player that might have improved their playoff chances. So I'm sorry, Steve Phillips, you make me sick.
We don't have a long enough show for me to get into my view on Wilpon, and Russ very well knows my view on this. We've had lots of conversations on this one. So I am far from a fan. I've basically viewed that they've used the Madoff situation as a crutch for way too many years.
Yes,
and if the fans have proven that if they spend money and they have a winning product, the place will be packed. Look at 2015. That place was completely packed every night the last couple of months of the season.
All right, let's get the show started. Let's see. What's the order here? Anthony and Jan, then Peter, then Russ. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December 28th, 2018.
I'm Anthony Majoni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Peter Tessier in Winnipeg.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We had a bunch of games last night. First set of games since the Christmas break. I think that I can speak for all of us that we're glad that the hockey was back. Although we had our Jones satisfied a bit by the World Juniors on Boxing Day, but want the NHL back. And I just have to say, when the All-Star break comes, that's the worst thing about the All-Star break is the fact that there aren't any games going on, and all we have to watch is that sort of meaningless couple days of happy horse.
What do you do to fill the time, the hours in those days, Mike? What do you do?
I go to see movies, Russ. I'm going to go see Aquaman.
There you go.
All right, we'll start off with a game I think I checked in on. I'm sure you guys, Anthony and Russ, watched. It was the Lightning and the Philadelphia Flyers, a 6-5 overtime win for the Lightning. The Lightning, who are now 15-1-1 in their last 17 games. Well, let's start with the Flyers. Again, 6 goals. Now, it was Neuwirth in that, correct?
Yes.
It was not,
Yes.
yeah, so they Scott Gordon at least saved Carter Hart from the not the embarrassment, but the getting pummeled by one of the league's best offenses. But I look at the Flyers and what I saw in some of the goals, and it's not just the goaltending, it's the defense. The defense is playing terribly.
Yeah, I will say this though. Ivan Provorov had a good game. I listened to about half and watched half. I thought he had a good game. Once again, though, Shane Gostisbehere in overtime, he shouldn't be out in overtime anymore. I wouldn't even use him. Like, he is just a detriment out there. And that part I was listening to on the radio, and the minute I heard them say, Shane Gostisbehere has the puck, whoops, I knew it was going in the net. Like, you just knew it.
Well, the turnover was on Giroux.
Okay.
You have to keep in mind that turnover was on Claude Giroux. He said it himself, obviously, that the turnover was on him. And we know the reason why Gostisbehere is going to remain out there. Again, if the Flyers are going to try to have a quick strike situation to try to bag a game in overtime, Gostisbehere's shot is one of the best weapons that they have on the team. It's just in terms of in a 3-on-3 situation with more open ice, in theory, it should be a situation that he should flourish in because he's such a good skater. But his instincts of late have been certainly on the questionable side. It's a weird thing, this game, Mike. The fact that I didn't think Philadelphia played that, despite them falling behind by a substantial amount.
Right.
I don't think they played that badly. And then, as crazy as it sounds, based on the scoring situations, it's just the Lightning overwhelm you with,
True.
You're going to say Claude Giroux is the game-breaking talent that he is, and we all obviously saw the goal. I mean, literally with the idea of doing lifting Ryan McDonough's stick on a break. Right. But Tampa's got multiple players that can do what Giroux does. So, right. In most circumstances, they're going to overwhelm you. And it seems like Tampa kind of lets go of the gas, and Philadelphia took that opportunity in a 7-minute span. And they've done this before. It happened earlier this season under Dave Haxtell, where they're down 5-1, rally to make it 5-5 before losing.
You know what the counterpoint is to that, Ann? I agree with you. And actually, Kucherov had the best performance I've seen of any player in weeks. He was unstoppable. And if he didn't hit the post and the outside of the net a couple times, he just scored more. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that was on the Flyers defense. That was just Kucherov just being that good. But what you're saying about what they have as far as firepower, that's where I shoot at Jake Voracek, because that's what he is supposed to be.
No, I concur there. That's the thing.
And that's where they should be able to match them.
Absolutely. Jake, they need more out of at this point right now. They need him to be, that, Robin to Giroux's Batman in this case. They need that. They need that. They certainly suffered, I think, not having, strangely enough, the effect of Nolan Patrick being out for for the remainder of the game, and they played better, which tells you a lot about Nolan's struggles here in year 2, as much as anything, that they actually played better with him out of the lineup. Mm-hmm. that's the circumstance there. Yes, Mike, absolutely. Defensively, man for man, of course they're not on the level.
McDonough had a rough game. He didn't have a good game.
But everybody did. I mean, certainly in the third quarter, everybody absolutely had a rough game in the third. And Tampa's kind of showing that if they don't play lockdown, they are open. They can be very much had defensively if you have the capability of taking it to them.
Let me go to that point, and Jan and Peter, you can talk about this. I mean, you're right. The big guys, the big guns came out for Tampa. Kucherov with a goal, Point with a goal, Stamkos with 2. Stamkos had 16 goals in the month of December, if you can believe. I mean, it was his most successful month of his NHL career. The point is that, and I look at Tampa, and right now Tampa's 8 points ahead of Toronto. They're leading the league. I think they have 60. I think it's 60 points, but I'm not 100%.
They just cracked 60 last night. Yeah.
Okay, so they have 60 points, and the Leafs are second in the league, and they're 8 points behind them. But the thing I look at Tampa, and Jan, you first, because there's a lot of ex-Rangers there. They have guys like McDonough. They have guys like Girardi who can play a shutdown game. So I think that right now against a team like the Flyers who are defensively challenged, they can open the throttle wide up and try to score as many goals. But when you get to the playoffs, I think they can play that other game that is successful in the playoffs. And that's where, like, for myself, I don't know if Toronto can play that game. But what do you think of Tampa right now?
I mean, they're a whole team. I mean, we discussed last week Toronto, what we thought they needed, and we felt that Toronto needed more of a physical shutdown kind of D-man and also needed a third, fourth liner to fully round out that roster. You look at Tampa Bay, and it's kind of hard to find any flaws on that roster. Granted, you have to worry about the usage associated with some of the D-men as they get a little older, especially Girardi and even McDonough to a certain extent. But after all the struggles that McDonough had last year, he's really rebounded. And the one benefit of some of the injuries that some of the guys have had, you look at Hedman has missed some time, you look at Strawman has missed some time. What it does, it's given them at least a little bit of an opportunity to get refreshed and not end up playing a full season. But that team is kind of loaded. And the guy who got hot, Matthew Joseph, is still out, and he's on injured reserve. Vasilevsky, he wore down last year. Well, you have Domingue. Domingue played fairly well when Vasilevsky was down, and because Vasilevsky won't have to be overused, the belief and the expectation is he'd be much better conditioned for the stretch run, making Tampa a much more difficult opponent as we get towards playoff time and into the postseason. But this is a team that's got everything. I mean, you got offense. You talked about it: Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, Johnson, Palat, Gordy. I mean, you look at Killorn and Cirelli. Cirelli's a really good third line center who can score a little bit. You could plug in Paquette. You plug in Callahan on your fourth line. It's hard to see if Tampa's going to even really need to make any moves. Maybe around the edges come the trade deadline on February 25th.
They need a defenseman, John. They do.
Maybe one more D-man. But they're pretty loaded, and Sergachev hasn't had a particularly good year. If he ever starts to play like he did last year, that's going to be a really good team.
That was another point, and I couldn't tell from listening in the car. I'm sorry, Peter. Did Sergachev ever come back in that game after the blocks?
Good question. I'm going to say no.
I don't think so.
Did
yeah. That hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, that thins them out certainly at a 5-man unit. But again, man for man, and they could drop one of their forwards back a little bit. Still, to give up that many goals in that short a period of time.
Peter, it's going to happen. I think one of the things that people underestimate too is that you can't, as complete a team as Tampa is, you can't always play complete hockey 100% of the time. Yeah. And I think the other thing we've crapped on the Flyers enough here for a while. I also think people grossly underestimate what the Flyers can be when they're clicking and when they get their offense rolling. There's a lot of good players on the Flyers who can put the puck in the net. Let's use a great cliche like that. So they got it going. Tampa took the foot off the gas and Philly came back, and credit to Philly. I mean, it made it a fun game, but I mean, Tampa as a whole, when they get it going, they are as locked down a team. But the one thing that's interesting is if they don't keep it going well, teams that have some pace and some scoring can sneak up on them. Calgary's done it, Winnipeg's done it, and last night Philadelphia did it. Like, they can keep, like, teams that have scoring can keep pace with Tampa. Then it becomes a shootout. It doesn't become a 3-2 game or a 2-1 game. It becomes a shootout. So that's probably the one thing that I think they've got to be a little nervous about going to the playoffs, because the last thing they need is to have your playoff run turning into shootouts every night where you have to outscore each other by guaranteeing 5 goals a night. And that's probably where, if you're Cooper and you're thinking about the team, you've got to find a bit of a solution to that, because that's not a success that's going to take you through the playoffs.
Yeah, and most people think the game before the break against Toronto that Toronto outplayed them, but Vasilevsky was in that game. And that's the thing. It's like when you're not playing at hitting on all 8 cylinders, you've got a world-class goaltender back there who can steal you a game. So I mean, that's an advantage that they have that some other teams don't. So all right,
one thing Mike, I'll add is that you look at it, I'm sure Cooper wasn't happy with the blown 5-2 lead in the playoffs also. Yeah. Well, so that's a mark of a team that's thinking longer term rather than just the game to game, because the blowing a 5-2 lead is not something that's going to sit well in that locker room.
That's
one last thing about the Flyers, and I'll see how Anthony responds, but their playoff chances are still like it's 18%, even on this nice little run. By the time Chuck Fletcher makes a move, he might be making moves for next year. And he may not admit that right now, but he already may be looking that way, because it's going to be near impossible for them to get back in it, really.
The playoff chances are 0%. I don't care what
I said 0% one year, Mike, and they got it on the last day, but a lot.
It's too as the way the Metro's been this year. I'm sorry, I can't go completely to 0% on it. But again, there's some things they have to make sure are tightened up, and they need help in front of them at the end of the day. They need some teams in front of them to slide, and they need to go on. They need to go on a tear. Their margin for error is pretty much nil at this point when you're only at 18%, as Russ stated. Right. And you add to the mix there the fact that their mindset is that they're going to make the playoffs. Their playoffs have already started in December.
Yeah,
sure. We'll talk about the Ranger game in a sec, Russ. But I want to go to this one first, because after the Ken Hitchcock bump, the Oilers have come down to earth. Now they lose 4-2 to the Canucks last night. Canucks score 4 first-period goals, and they coast to a 4-2 victory. This is the thing. Now Edmonton's lost 4 in a row. They're not getting stand-on-your-head goaltending from Koskinen or Talbot. Things have sort of settled back after that initial rush, and now that team, as we saw with Todd McClellan, the defense isn't good. They're without Clefbaum, and the offense is named Connor McDavid and nobody else. So yeah. I don't know, Peter. I'll start with you. I don't know where all this enthusiasm. I mean, I know they're still in a wild card spot right now. At least the last time I looked, I think they were like 1 or 2 points up for the wild card spot. I don't know if it's easier said than done to neutralize McDavid, but if you can control McDavid, they have nothing else.
I think the understanding of what Ken Hitchcock can do. Ken Hitchcock's a good coach. He's a good hockey mind. I think Ken Hitchcock, what he wants players to do in his systems, you need more than him coming in to be a savior. He needs to start with the team in July, not in November, and think you can change it around. They got their bump, but that roster is so fundamentally flawed on so many ways.
Yes.
And I mean, I hope Todd McClellan's just sitting back and going, sorry, Hitch, you're learning what I am now too. And he sent him a kind text.
He's kicking up his feet and smoking a cigar, basically enjoying his salary.
There's so many things that are wrong with it. And I don't think Peter Chiarelli has the ability to get himself out of this by making roster changes for 2 reasons. One, because I don't think he understands what he has to do. I don't think he understands the makeup of the team, the players he needs. And 2, because I don't think he's capable of digging himself out of the hole of the contracts he's signed that's put himself in. So he can't see what he needs to see. And if he does see it, he's got to make some really tough choices to an owner who's not exactly known for, spending money on things that he doesn't want to, and convince them that maybe you got to buy someone out, Milan Lucic maybe, and move on from that. And that's just, I see a fair bit of Edmonton. It's a jigsaw puzzle that's been made but you had a blindfold on and you've squished pieces into spots to make it fit, and you think, well, it's close enough.
Yeah, and one of their good stories, Alex Chason got hurt last night, and he was playing on the wing with McDavid. So I don't know if it's a serious injury, but he left the game and didn't return. So if he is out for a while, that's what the funny thing is that team should have so much offensive talent, but most of it at that center, and they don't have any complementary guys on the wing.
But they still don't have patience. Like, they are keeping Jesse Pujärvi in there. The addition of Ty Ratty has been a disaster. 4 points in 21 games, and he's a minus. Right. That's a disaster. I didn't have any faith in that working out. Patrick Maroon brought more to the table than Ty Ratty. We have to give him credit for that. Ty Ratty was this guy that's been drifting around that caught fire in the preseason, and that's what the preseason is good for, because nobody plays the right way.
Well, the other thing, he played 8 games at the end of the season and played really well, so they used that as the preview.
Yeah, that was the springboard. No patience in Keller Yamamoto either. And if they had patience for him, they would eventually get a return. But they don't have any patience. It's like when Hitch took over, it's like, when now? I'm going to play these big guys. I'm going to shake up the goaltending situation. And it worked for a short term. And now you just don't know.
I mean, Ross, I think what Mike mentioned also, losing Klefbom has been a bigger loss.
Oh, it's big. But again,
what it's forced to happen is Nurse, who was actually playing pretty well, has mightily struggled moving up a level in terms of who he's matched up against.
I said that he's
major. I mean, Koskinen hasn't played well. That's a huge impact. You get Klefbom back, move Nurse down a line in terms of who he matches up against, and all of a sudden your defense is a lot more spread out. Well, offensively, Nugent Hopkins, I think, has had a pretty good year. Chason's been relatively decent, but they're gonna probably never find anybody that's gonna match up with McDavid unless they just leave Pujärvi there and say, you know what? We're giving you a 10-game stretch, and let's see what you can do, and we're not taking you off, and see if they can rebuild his confidence, because he's got none right now.
The thing. I brought up a solution when the injury occurred, because I knew Nurse can't take a step up. I knew that. Play Connor McDavid at the point on the power play. That's your solution, but Hitch won't do it because he's not that kind of coach.
Right, and the other defensemen on that blue line, like Larson, aren't capable of stepping up to take over the responsibilities of Klefbom. I mean, that's a guy who's a 25-minute-a-night defenseman, so they really don't have the depth on the blue line to be able to compensate for that. And also, the Canucks are sticking around, 40 points now. They move ahead of Edmonton. If you look at the wild card standings right now, Anaheim 43, Dallas 41 with their win yesterday over, I think it was Nashville. Vancouver at 40 and Edmonton at 39. I mean, it may go down to the very end, but unless Chiarelli makes some sort of deal that improves them, I just don't see Edmonton being able to make the playoffs unless Connor McDavid just is, unless he scores 2 points a game from now until the end of the season. But anyway.
Well, Elias Pettersson got 2 points. We should point that out.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Columbus and the Rangers. Now, I didn't see any of the game, but I did see there was some crosstalk regarding a disputed goal near the end of the game, and then I believe it was Pierre-Luc Dubois scored in overtime. Russ, what were you?
I didn't see that. I saw about half the game. And I'm glad that Chris Kreider was playing well. He had a couple goals. There were a lot of Ranger fans that wanted to trade him, but I said you got to hang in there with him because he had gotten into some bad habits under Vigneault. Vigneault used to do the breakout passes, stretch passes with him, totally took it out of his arsenal, and then he was lost for a while. But in this game, I just saw Brendan Smith pretty much play defense like he was – you know how there was the clown that you used to be able to hit? You'd knock it down and come back up. You'd knock it down again. It was called like a bop something when you were a kid. That's what Brendan Smith was like, and he was just falling down in front of Henrik Lundqvist. And on one of the goals, Lundqvist just leaned on his stick and was just so angry because he almost looked at Brendan Smith, and I swear he was probably thinking, what did you do over the holidays? Have you even, come back here with a thought of winning? And this is the problem with that deal. This is the problem with giving him playing time. If I were David Quinn, I would just not play Brendan Smith for a long time. That would be my solution. I don't know how Jan feels.
I covered Smith in my blog today and basically said that I don't think he'll be in the game Saturday night against Nashville. I figured D'Angelo would be in even if Kevin Shattenkirk's not back. And sure, it looks like the run he had after they acquired him from Detroit and that playoff performance was a major aberration. And he got himself paid from it. And then he got fat the next year going to too many weddings. And while they came in camp this shape this year, I really thought that he would have a reversal of fortune, and it just haven't happened. Because I wanted to see him and Shea paired or him and Shattenkirk paired and seeing what that duo, either one of those duos can do. And every time he finally gets to find his sea legs, as you said, he kind of reverts back to prior form, and he's been horrible this year.
Yeah.
The other game now, Peter, I know that you were making some comments about Noah Hannafin in our group chat. I know that Dustin Byfuglien hacked at Johnny Gaudreau on an empty net hat trick goal. But tell us about that Calgary-Winnipeg game.
I think a little frustration came over for Buff. Yeah, Gaudreau just danced around him. Just made him look flat-footed and silly. But the game was sort of done at that point. The Jets and Flames played a really tight tilt. The Flames went up 1-0 when Laine scored on his own net. And he was doing a back check. He did all the right things. It's just he put his stick reaching in and it went past Hellebuck. The Flames, this is a team that needs to get a little more press. And I don't have Toronto and Calgary played yet, Mike?
Not that I remember.
No, I don't think so. This will be a fun one to watch because I think the dynamicism of the Flames forwards and the Leafs forwards is going to make a really fun game, really fun matchup.
Yeah,
that Gaudreau, Monahan, Hannafin line is something else. It's
you mean Lindholm.
Lindholm. Sorry, that's Lindholm. That's what I meant. Lindholm, not Hannafin. Hannafin is playing excellent, but Lindholm, it's something else. They scored a very pretty one on the.
Wait, Peter. So are you saying they got the better of that trade, Calgary? Really? Is that what you're proclaiming here?
I'm not saying they got the better of the trade.
Oh, they did.
Don Liddell got robbed in a deal. No, come on.
I don't think Carolina's problems can be attributed to Dougie Hamilton.
Right.
But adding that and Bill Peters into the mix is they've found their groove, and they're still really not getting anything out of James Neal, right? So this is a very interesting team, and you're probably not going to hear much about him in the East.
Yeah.
But having seen them twice now in the last month, they're for real and they're dangerous. They're very dangerous. But Riddick, I don't know what sorcery that guy's practicing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who he's selling his soul to, but they should find out what pregame rituals he's doing and bring them to Philadelphia, because this guy is coming out of nowhere.
In Philadelphia right now.
I'd say they should make a movie, but there was something like the Chronicles of Riddick, right? So.
Russ.
No, that was spelled like
excellent game. They totally deserved to win. The Jets didn't play poorly. They controlled all the possession. They shelled them. Absolutely shelled them.
It's funny because I was reading Pierre LeBrun's piece in The Athletic, and he was doing sort of like half-season awards. And when he was talking about the Norris Trophy, he had the top candidates being Giordano in Calgary and Morgan Riley in Toronto. I think that's pretty accurate. I think there's a couple other guys out there.
I think Thomas Chabot's in the conversation too.
Yeah, but I do think Russ, and we know this from previous Norris Trophy voting, that these guys sort of have to earn their way up. Now, the thing is, Riley's never been in there, so you could say the same thing about him, and that maybe would give Giordano a leg up because he's been in the Norris running a few times before. But
so you're saying a guy with 10 goals and a point per game at defense has to earn his way?
Yeah,
nonsense.
That's nonsense. The way it's been. I
know, but it's nonsense. I agree, and I'm telling you, it's nonsense.
I agree that it's nonsense, but I think it's the reality.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, look, Riley will get a lot of Toronto voters, and I will stop short and just say it that way. A lot of Toronto votes.
Okay. An interesting contract was signed yesterday. And okay, again, I look at this, and first I'll look at it from the Pittsburgh perspective, and then sort of around the league. Jake Guentzel, who's played great in a couple Stanley Cup wins for the Penguins, a petite, very quick, talented forward. He gets a 5-year extension that starts next year. He's on the last year of his ELC right now. 5-year deal at $6 million AAV. Now, Anthony, I'll go to you first because Russ's cat has jumped all over
He's taking over the show.
Jesus.
I'll start with you, Sans cat. I think this contract spells the end after this season of Phil Kessel in Pittsburgh.
Oh, you're going to say it's not a perfect fit there?
Hang up on him, please.
Go ahead.
No, I concur on that front. I think we've seen it. I think if you've read the tea leaves in Pittsburgh long enough right now that I don't think Kessel's long for Pittsburgh. I think he'll be moving elsewhere, and I think this contract is definitely an indicator of that with the investment that they've made now in Guentzel. And I think this, some of it's deservedly so. Some of it, of course, obviously, he's just a really good fit. Obviously, with Crosby, I think the two of them together would work extremely well together. So I think someone, I believe, might have been Sarah Sivian from the Athletic, said something about this. Sidney Crosby's contract get an assist on Jake Guentzel's contract, which
he gets a lot of assists for a lot of contracts.
It's for a lot of contracts. So
did Mario. Stefan Richer would never have gotten the money.
Yeah, I think Guentzel's the guy, certainly the guy to invest in, certainly long term here. I think it's a fair value contract.
Anthony, when you see that contract, there's a lot of teams that have players like just below Jake Guentzel, and Travis Konechny is one of them. And
he's that deal. It's a comparable. The difference is that Guentzel's postseason performance is what puts him over the top. Other players don't quite have his resume in the postseason.
Right, and he had 33 points in his rookie year in 40 games, then a full year at 48 points, 22 goals, and this year he's got 33 points in 37 games. Russ, I look at that contract, and the first one that comes to mind, obviously, because I was focused on it for most of the first half of this year, was the William Nylander contract. Right, and if you look, he's making 6, and he's never scored 60 points. And Nylander has scored 60 points twice, and he's getting 6.9. This deal sort of makes the Nylander deal look okay, but I don't know.
It makes it look okay if Nylander actually comes through. If Nylander doesn't get it back this year, a lot of questions are going to be raised. Again, how many points does he have, Nylander?
Right now, 2 points in 8 games.
Me personally, I would already have sent him back to the AHL and said,
well, they can't, because he unless he agrees to a conditioning.
No, he would have to agree, and I would say, listen, you're going because you can't cut it right here at the NHL level, and you didn't come back in the kind of shape we needed you to. So agree to this conditioning assignment because you already got your deal. That's what I would do with him.
There seems to be a charm campaign going on, Peter, between Babcock and Dubas and Nylander when it comes to – I don't think they want to openly criticize him, because then the criticism will come back on them for, negotiating until December 1st. They're in a way, they're partially responsible because they either didn't get the deal done or trade him before December 1st. And now I think they're trying to say, okay, we're winning, and we're winning without Nylander in the lineup. So we'll just grin and bear it and hope he catches up. But with Guentzel, he's one of those rare guys that can play with Crosby. So, and you look at the salary here, Kessel has 6.8 for another 3 years, and he's over the age of 30. And we know that he wears thin after a few years in any place that he's been. And Guentzel now is 24 and is starting on the first year of a 5-year deal next year.
Yeah. Look, why wouldn't Pittsburgh extend him? Like what in what world is Guentzel not valuable to the Penguins? So, it's an obvious thing that was going to happen, right? I don't think this is news. I think anything that we talk about with a player that has time with Crosby, you obviously have Crosby assist. I think the idea that people can't play with Crosby, this whole narrative is kind of an interesting thing. Let's flip it around. Is there
actually a narrative for that? Because
there is a thing that says it's difficult to play. Media have, on the whole, brought in, and it reached peak in the 2010 Olympics was when it was peak. It's hard to play with Crosby, and so I think the interesting thing about that is let's look at it this way. It's hard to play with Crosby because he's so bloody good, and that he does things no one else does. You know what? Anyone can play with McDavid because he's not as good as Crosby. So there's your flip around on it.
Well, what the flip around is too, though, and I've seen Crosby do this in game, out of game, even in the locker room. he's always talking to the guys and at least telling them what he sees and what they can do. And maybe some guys don't like that. Maybe some guys just like to sort of coast out there, and you can't do it with Crosby.
You can't do it with Crosby. I mean, Crosby does things that are so different than any other player. Particularly because he's not a massive guy. He's ridiculously strong, and his hand-eye coordination at speed and in things is off the charts. He's like an Avenger, and that can be really difficult to move around with. You know, so Guentzel gets him, and Guentzel understands that. And I think for some guys who've come in, they haven't been Guentzel's age to learn with him from that slope up, and that's probably the best part about Guentzel and how he's come into Pittsburgh. You know, as for Phil Kessel, well, whatever it is about Phil Kessel, there's something there. Maybe he hasn't found a good hot dog vendor. Maybe, you know, he's, you know, maybe it's something else. But
I didn't say it, folks.
I wonder if Phil Kessel's going to be the guy where is Toronto paying any of his salary right now?
1.2.
1.2. I wonder if he's going to be a guy who has 6 teams paying for a salary by the time this contract.
He could be, but he's always going to produce goals, and
honestly, this is if Kessel is truly available, and he's and Rutherford's going to do something with him. He should be on the phone with Rob Blake right now, because that's the perfect landing spot.
Hey, Thomas Dundon, there's your sniper. There's the sniper you're looking for. But you know, just quickly, you look at the Penguins. I mean, they're not moving Malkin or Crosby. They're set for another 3 or 4 years on their contract.
Kessel's not moving in season this year. He's not.
No. I'm saying this is. I'm saying
that would be end of this year going.
Yeah, I'm saying in the summer. But you know, Hornquist at 5.3, Pearson at 3.75, Rust at 3.5. I mean, they already moved out Connor Sheary for cap reasons. If they're I don't think they're going to move Guentzel, so I think they're going to move Kessel. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, that's something.
The other thing, Mike, I wanted to point out about Nylander for just a hot second. He's a minute 40 off his time on the ice from last year. So clearly, the coaches can't play.
They're spoon feeding him, Russ. Yeah. They're limiting his ice time. They've been ramping it up. I mean, I'll say this: I think that the patience is going to start to wear thin coming back from this break. You know, they're playing 2 games in 2 straight days. I think.
What has Sports Science said since it's past the 12 days? Have they come out with a new prognosis? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. I'll check their Twitter feed. I don't know. Okay. I'm not friends with Sports Science. Okay. I'm not friends with any kind of science.
Okay. No. Don't go there.
Michael?
Okay, let's just touch on the World Juniors here for a second. Not Finland and Kazakhstan, because that was I watched about 3 seconds of that game.
I actually watched a bit of it.
Really?
And I thought the Kazakh goalie played really well for what was coming at him. He had no defense in front of him, and he was getting shelled, and he was doing great things. Now, what I will say about this is you guys don't get him as often as I have to listen to. But if you caught the TSN feed, Craig Button was doing the color.
Yes.
There is no way Craig Button should be being paid to talk about hockey. Russ.
I know.
We have this thing called Craigslist up here where Craig talks about junior players. Look, I'm not saying Craig's a bad guy. He's an entertaining guy. He's good on camera. He's got a good voice. He's got a good buzz around him. But he shouldn't be standing there describing what's going on with hockey and basically trying to map out plays. I'd be just as bad, but I'm not being paid what Craig Button's being paid. Although I do have the hair to match.
I've bumped into Craig Button a couple times at the draft combine and other places. He's a great guy. I really like him.
Yeah.
The one thing yesterday, I saw a snippet, and he was critiquing Rasmus Kupari of the Finns, and essentially calling out his manhood, because essentially there was a Finnish defenseman who had the puck at the point, and Kupari's in front of the net, and Kupari created space to let the shot go through, and Button was critiquing him and saying, you should be standing in front of the net and trying to deflect the shot. And I'm like, okay, that's his critique, but it was just it was done a little heavy-handed.
He didn't fit the idea.
Yeah,
he could be over the top, but you have to give him credit. Like in the Sweden game, he pointed out when they showed Eric Brandstrom scoring his goal, before he scored his goal, how he got into position with that amazing skating at the top of the circle there. That was good. I mean, and I think he does more of that than what you guys are talking about. But okay.
Yeah, the other game in the game that I focused on and watched most of was Canada and Switzerland. It was a rather close game, 3-2 with Canada winning. I think that it was 3-1 until very late. Ian Scott, the Leaf draft pick, was in goal. I thought he played okay. But they're probably like we talked about yesterday, they're going to go back to DiPietro, unless DiPietro gets lit up by the Czech Republic. I think he'll probably be in there for most of the rest of the tournament. I was impressed, Russ, with Cody Glass. He looked really good. And Tim Hunter. I mean, here's a reference that you and Jan will get. Tim Hunter compared Cody Glass to Jean Rattel.
I would slow the roll on that, because in his era, Jean Rattel was just dynamic, and he was like the first Ranger to score 100 points. And it's just, when Cody Glass scores 100 points, then we can go there. Let's just do that. But getting past that, I didn't see a lot of this game, but I did have this Twitter conversation after Bob McKenzie posted about the defense, and I said, Marcus Phillips, okay defenseman. Noah Dobson should not be on the third pair. He's better than that. Yes. Noah Dobson gets a goal. Marcus Phillips, I get it. He's playing the penalty kill, and he's sort of like gritty. It's like with the American team. There was too much Phil Kemp and too much Phil Kemp talk for the little bit of offense that he gives you and that extra grit and size. I get it. But Noah Dobson's clearly better. It's not even close.
And at 3-2 with about 10 seconds left to go in the third period and the face-off in the Canadian zone, they had McKenzie, Entwistle, Phillips, and you had basically your fourth line guys and your third, and I guess they consider Phillips one of their shutdown defensive guys. Whereas I just think there are guys who are more talented who deserve more ice time. Now, I get role players, I get players playing in specific roles, but I don't know. I mean, I mean, Switzerland played a really good game.
Entwistle's fine if he's with Moon, Daltrey, and Townsend. No, I like Mackenzie Entwistle. I do. But I wouldn't have him out there at the end of the game either. He is a really good, greasy player, though. He is. But Phillips, this love for Phillips, I think is going to cause problems for him. Now, again, they won the game, so I can't kill him. But I think Peter and I did have a good point. Scoring 14 goals did not do anything for them in that game.
No. Did nothing.
Absolutely
nothing. And let's not forget that Swiss coach is like some Zen master that takes a little bit of Bowman and throws it in with some.
He mixes it up, man. He does.
Yeah, he mixes it up. He's great. Like I've got that guy can do an interview anytime. Like I've got all the time in the world.
Said we have no chance last year. Was that the same guy?
Yeah, right. Basically, and he threw in a little Jim Mora.
Yeah, Jim Mora.
Playoffs.
He's very entertaining.
He's probably got a little Vince Lombardi in him too.
But again, for all the ripping that I took, I hope Ranger fans can see what Nico Gross does for that team. He's a good player. I never was going to say he's a superstar. He's not. He's not even going to be a star, but he's going to be a very good NHL defenseman, and that was a good pick by Gordy to get him because he makes good defensive plays. Like on that team, he's covering top players. He's doing a really good job.
Okay, we ready? Here goes. Here's the Swiss coach. So it's Christian It's Wohlwend.
Okay.
Our team. I'm going to do it in his voice. Our team played amazing. We played against one of the best teams in the tournament. It was freaking close. But when you don't score 5-on-5 and we create a lot of scoring chances, then you can win against Canada.
Well done.
Can we superimpose how we really sound next to Anthony and see if we're close?
No, that's great.
I heard the guy last year. It's pretty much.
We can't touch that.
No, can't touch this. All right, we'll take some questions.
Close.
Well, one thing. You do kind of wonder if at some point the Swiss coach does become a coach that gets talked about for the NHL, simply because last year we kind of felt like the Swiss team, because of Nico Hischier, was great because of that. this year, you know, they have Nando Eggenbader. He's been around, right? He's his second World Juniors. He's a decent player. He doesn't have.
I'm loving the fact that we had a game with players named Entwistle and Engenberger.
Yeah. But Nando's a good player, but the idea is he doesn't have any stars on that team, but he's coaching great. And so I kind of wonder if he's going to get a look at some point.
Somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll take some questions in the chat to end the show after this next subject.
It's Eggenberger. Sorry. I got in about 4:30.
Hammenegger.
Yeah.
I'm hungry for an omelet now. Okay. Little note here that I just saw, and this is sort of ominous when it comes to what will happen next summer. We're all aware of, you know, that that next summer the opt-in or opt-out for the CBA comes up with both the NHLPA and with the owners. I think it's the PA that goes first, and then the owners go second. CSKA Moscow in the KHL acquired the rights of 3 notable NHLers: Sebastian Aho from the Carolina Hurricanes, not the Sebastian Aho from the Islanders, David Pasternak, and Joe Armia, to get their rights for potentially a lockout in 2020. So this is, you know, I mean, this is strategic. I mean, it's not guaranteeing that there is going to be a lockout, although I think a lot of people think it's going to be. But just hearing that makes, I mean, I still think that there's a way that they pull back from the brink. I don't think it does either side any good to end the CBA and to go, you know, adversarial. But when I hear this, I'm thinking that other teams are preparing for this, and this might happen. So
maybe we're going to see Rick Nash return for HC Davos before he comes back to the NHL.
Nice. Him and Joe Thornton will play together again.
Yeah.
Joe Thornton says he's going to play in Switzerland at the end of his career because his wife is from there. Apparently.
Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, when you hear this, I mean, I don't know where you are in terms of, do you think there's going to be a lockout or not going to be a lockout? But when you hear this, doesn't this start to make you think that the chances are greater than you thought?
Yeah, they're planning for it, and I mean, it's good league management to sort of plan for it and see who you might get. We don't hear any talk about it, and the fact that we don't hear any talk about it is good, because we used to hear a lot of sniping even a couple of years before. We're not hearing that, so I think that's as positive a sign as I could say.
No news is good news, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm not optimistic that we're going to avoid a lockout.
I mean, nobody should be.
But again, given the signs that we've seen, especially the contentiousness that went on associated with the Olympics, and now even with trying to get together another tournament like they had a couple of years ago, and the difficulties they've had in trying to craft one of those tournaments, it doesn't bode well in terms of what the future brings.
I do wonder sometimes about, you know, whether or not, I mean, granted, he's already in the Hall of Fame now, but I do wonder if it's in the back of Gary's head that, you know, he's already had a couple of them on his watch already. Do you want to continue to have? Do you want to be basically? Yeah, 3. Sorry, 3. Nah, 3. Sorry,
Yeah,
we'll see. But
well,
yeah.
it's all a question of what the battle lines are going to be about. I mean, I can continue to hear the players don't like escrow. Well, escrow is necessary for a
escrow
50
or escarole, because I don't like escarole.
No, escrow, not escarole. Right. They don't like escrow,
Maybe
but escrow is
soup.
part of any hockey related revenue 50-50 split. You really have to have an escrow situation to be able to manage that. So I don't see how you do away with it. I mean, Kevin Allen has said that a bunch of times. So it's like, I mean, you can hate it. I think that.
I think
you either give them, you pay them stipend for the whole year, and you like basically. So if you have a $5 million contract, you pay a flat stipend. That's okay. Let's treat them as a real union, and you all get the same, and you all get the same. And at the end of the year,
hold on, in front of the ACC, will we see that big blow up rat if there's a lockout situation like most unions do?
Yeah, no, I know exactly. And then you settle up at the end of the year, so no one gets anything, and it's all done. I mean, the whole nature of this thing is so silly, because the real unfortunate thing about it is is you sort of got a position where escrow is your only answer. If you want 50-50, which was their demand, it's your only solution. There isn't another solution. So you can't complain about the only solution. Just because the only solution doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean that you're getting taken advantage of or it hurts you. And it's just, it's kind of
here's what I tell the players. If you don't want escrow, we're not going to have any compliance buyouts and real numbers now on the cap. The cap, whatever you get paid is what shows up on the cap. And if players don't get bought out, they don't get a chance to double dip anymore. And then some of them will have to stay with a team that they don't want to stay with. And currently, that's not happened with this other CBA. Gave them great freedom and gave at least, I don't even know the number, probably about 10 players a chance to make money from 2 different teams. They can do away with that in a heartbeat.
Look, I mean, yeah, exactly. I think the thing that I know if I was sitting there as an owner, what I'd be ranting and raving about at the meetings and stuff. But I think if there's one thing, if they both sides really do care about the fan experience, it's that they need to find a way to allow for more player movement within the league. The idea of trades is what makes hockey something really interesting. Football has no trades. It's a wash. Baseball does. But it's
more this year by comparison.
But in comparison, right?
Well, it's
baseball does, but it's not in the. It's different. But
Peter,
it's a key component of what makes baseball fun.
Here's how you do it, Peter. You in hockey, you create one more roster spot for every team, and you make it a designated scorer, and that guy is your shootout specialist. Now I've created a job. There you go.
So you just increase the skills,
but it's movement around the league.
It's ironic
around the league that allows players to move a little easier. Now they may not like it because it's stability and family and stuff like that. But the idea that you get trapped in a place that you don't want to be in is the other thing. And there's got to be. I think that's where I'd like to see a lot of energy.
But that's on the player. That's tough luck for the player. You know what? I look at the player and I say, if you sign that contract, because again, I go back to certain agents like Scott Boras. There's certain agents, and in hockey too, where if guys are going to go to the highest bidder and then they get stuck in a situation they don't want to be stuck in,
I agree.
That's on them. Take less money and play with the better team.
Russ, I've said this for years. I said this since lockout 1.0. Or with salary cap 1.0. What we were going to find out is who wants the money and who wants to be on a winner.
Right.
Peter, it's ironic you bring this up because I was listening to another podcast, Bill Simmons podcast, and he was talking about how the NBA and what they're doing right now in terms of social media and also in terms of, like, for lack of a better term, the hot stove. What's going to happen next year in terms of signings and players going here or there. That almost supersedes the importance of individual games. And, I think that's a bad thing, but I do think that trades and speculation has been what drives interest in these leagues, especially hockey. And I think that with the salary cap, that has waned a little bit. It's limited general managers being able to make trades. And I mean, I love the trade deadline, but the trade deadline the last few years has been friggin' boring because teams are locked into little spaces that they can maneuver in.
I want to point out something. Here's a list, and I think it might be right. It's from Sport Track, of active career earnings. So Sidney Crosby's number 1, and he's the biggest winner, so he deserves that. Shea Weber's number 2. He hasn't won anything yet. Joe Thornton's number 3. He hasn't won anything yet. Roberto Luongo's number 4. He hasn't won anything yet. Marian Gabourik's number 5. He hasn't won anything yet. Then you get Alex Ovechkin.
1-1.
One with LA.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And then that's right. I forgot he was a big part of that LA one. I take that back.
Oh, he did.
No, he was. And then Alex Ovechkin. So, like, you go and you look at these guys. Malkin's only at $89 million, but he wins. Spets is at 87. He hasn't won. Like, it's just, if these guys want to make this kind of money and they don't win, sometimes it's on them and the choices they make.
They also make a calculated gamble in most circumstances for the balance of the potential to win with also the salary at the same time. I mean, we're going to be saying potentially the same thing about John Tavares if the Leafs don't win.
Well, very well, we might, because he supposedly picked a place that he wanted to go win. I mean, that was
right. So at the end of the day,
the money.
Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry won their Stanley Cup on their ELCs, and ever since they became $7-8 million players, they didn't win.
Here's an example, too. Henrik Lundqvist has made $13 million less in his career than Roberto Luongo. Like, neither has won. They both made it to the Stanley Cup. You know,
but is that because
Lundqvist could make more. He could have made more.
But again, are they the specific cause why they didn't win?
No. But I'm saying Lundqvist could have made more. Clearly, Luongo made as much as he could make.
He's making $8.5 million a year, Russ. He did not give the Rangers any kind of discount when he took his deal years ago. It was the highest paid goalie in the league. So, again, I'm not begrudging him at all, but I know the argument against that. And again, he could have made 7.5 and given them some additional cap room.
All right, Russ, let's look at the chat, see for a couple questions.
Let's look at the chat. All right. All right, so Ski asks, the St. Louis Blues are 6-3-1 in the last 10. Do we see them making the same kind of trades they have in the past couple of years and unload players that won't be signed next year? Yes, they're definitely going to do that.
Yeah,
same GM.
Yeah, same game plan. Definitely going to do it. There's no way. That's what they have to do. They're not going to ever start a new rebuild, but they're going to rotate around this roster for sure.
But Doug Armstrong, and there's been reports about the Blues that he is of a mind of, clearly this core group has not succeeded over the last 2 or 3 years. I think there's a potential there for them to make some sort of, shifting move like a Pietrangelo, like a Tarasenko, if they get the return that they need to get. I think that's possible. Maybe Parayko. But even though they've turned it around a little bit, they're so far behind, they're not going to climb back into the race.
No. And Vepsis says, Backus is getting a hearing today for an illegal check to Blake Coleman. What comes around goes around. I saw Blake Coleman do a pretty dirty hit on Brad Marchand that he didn't even get a penalty for because clearly it's Brad Marchand. Blake Coleman, he has a lot coming to him, so I don't feel bad about that at all.
And he drinks pickle juice, so there's something wrong with the guy.
Pickle juice is good, Mike. It's got a lot of electrolytes.
Al Leiter thinks so.
So the most of the Eagles roster in that home opener in that opener years ago, right?
That was the Chip Kelly.
That was no, it wasn't Chip Kelly. That was Andy Reid. That goes back to.
Okay. I was back then. All right.
Andy Reid ate all the pickles.
If he was only eating pickles, never mind. Esmir says, I also believe that the league needs to do something about teams used as a dumping ground like Arizona, used by Chicago or Detroit. Good luck with that, Esmir. That will happen until the end of time.
Not a friggin' chance. That's the only thing that they do right. It's like Look at the roster right now of the Arizona Coyotes. Marian Hossa, Dave Boland. It's like one of those disposal areas in the desert for old airplanes.
Pronger's off the books now officially, right? Pronger's off the books.
Pronger's off the books. So is Datsuk.
Yeah.
So maybe next year Terry Sawchuk will be off the books there.
All right.
Last question. Injury reserve, they might.
Last question is from Thomas. With Eberle gone for sure, what could the Islanders get for him in a trade? I see him going sooner rather than later. Here's the thing. He's got
second round pick.
He's got 17 points in 35 games. I'm looking at Jordan Eberle like he's peaked as a player already. So
and he's a $6 million cap hit. Yeah. So that mitigates what you'll get back unless the Islanders, unless Lou, and Lou's not above this. Lou could retain up to $3 million to get more.
If he retains that, he'll get a second-round pick and some sort of prospect.
And that's value, and that's excellent value.
Right, and that's what he should do. He should retain that salary. That is the best way to get a return.
There's no reason for them not to retain it. And plus, also, by the time the trade deadline comes, remember, you only got 2/6 of the salary left also. So
and ironically, what team out there needs a scoring winger? The Edmonton Oilers?
And here's, all right, one last
you
question.
Can't go home again.
This is an interesting one. Steve James asks if Scott Mayfield will be a fit for Toronto's top four. He's not a fit for anybody's top four, but he's a really good defenseman. Actually, I've covered him since the USHL, and I think he's really come around as a defenseman, but really he's got to be a bottom pairing guy no matter what the team.
Okay, quick question to Anthony and you, Russ. Is Radko Gudas a top four defenseman?
I mean, he could be shielded for a short time.
Superior. The only way it works is if you got, I think, from a true talent standpoint, is the answer is no.
Right.
If you have three really good defensemen in front of him that are playing at peak level, say Provorov and Gostisbehere play to their capabilities,
right?
Then you can potentially work that situation out.
So
but standing right
I think in a playoff situation, Anthony, you could do it because it's a short time.
You could in a short window, I would say so.
Yeah.
But again, you have to understand in terms of a long-term commitment and thinking him over the long term, he can be that. The answer is no.
Okay.
So you're saying,
let me ask a question then.
Go ahead.
When do the Flyers become sellers?
I think sometime I think we get into.
What time
You're going to wait till the bitter end.
No, but do you think, like, as they go through this process, because we're talking about other teams,
Mhm.
do you think they go through January and say, no, we're going to get the leap on this and do our moves now, do a move or two
Well, it's
now,
supposed
or
to
do you
be
think they
done
wait to the deadline?
Pattern if they feel like that they are not making up any ground in terms of what they've been able to do, then I think at that point, if they just look at the situation, they just, even if they're winning and other teams in front of them are still doing it, then that could be where Fletcher says, you know what, it's time to start putting my stamp on the team in terms of what I want to get done.
I think Dave Scott's learning.
If they think they're gaining ground, then I think they're going to be that. Then those moves may be held till the offseason.
Yeah, Dave Scott is learning the hard way that it's nice to say we want to make moves, we want to make changes. It's not easy to do it and make a good trade.
And is Simmons the first guy out the door?
I think so.
I think so. I think if anybody's going to get dealt first, it probably will be Wayne Simmons. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. He'll likely get a bump wherever he goes, especially if he's in a playoff hunt.
Yeah, I mean, and I said this in something I wrote a couple days ago. Everybody in Toronto would love Wayne Simmons because he provides the pushback that I think Toronto desperately needs, and he could play in their top six. But the package that you would have to pay Philadelphia is probably close to what they would have to pay to get the defenseman that they need. I didn't say the usual thing, Russ, so you can't drink on that one. But I think the value they would have to give up would be a pretty close. I don't think they can do two deals like that. I think they can do one deal like that. So if they're going to go for that blue liner, I think that's what they're going to give up assets for. All right. Great show, guys. Thank everybody for watching the show this year. We will be back. We won't be having a show on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, so we'll be back on Wednesday with the next edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. So for Anthony Mangione, for Jan Levine, for Peter Tessier.
Have a very gritty year.
Very gritty.
Boo.
Had to get that one. I didn't. Yeah.
I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.